It is a good-looking start to the weekend, but I've got cold air and high winds on the way. We'll break it down for you just ahead.
The fight over higher education spending has taken a new turn after Governor Bevin reduced funding to colleges and universities.
And he has made it official. UK freshman Jamal Murray announcing he is entering the NBA draft. Details from his announcement coming up.
This is WKYT News at 4.
Welcome to WKYT News at 4. I'm Amber Philpott reporting. Right now, we are standing by for a live news conference with the Attorney General where he is expected to talk about the governor's cuts to higher education. We will have that as soon as he becomes available. Now, turning back to weather, it seems that March roared out like a lion yesterday with some strong winds and severe thunderstorms. But now we turn our attention to the month of April. Take a look. This is a live picture now of downtown Lexington. Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Chris Bailey on what we can expect this weekend. For starters, it's a pretty good afternoon on this Friday.
Yeah, it really is. Weekend is off and running on a nice note out there. As you mentioned, Amber, sunshine, a little bit of high cloud cover beginning to stream on in, and those are clouds that will eventually bring about change to the region. Still mild, though, 64 degrees, humidity much lower than what we were talking about yesterday with those strong and severe thunderstorms. Winds right now 21 miles an hour. Those are sustained. Gusts have been closing in on 30 from time to time. Still 60s across the entire area. Not bad at all. That's going to change, though. Defender Radar Network, nothing up close and personal. Let's broaden out the view. Southeastern Kentucky, more in the way of some clouds with some showers across sections of the Smoky Mountains. To our northwest, front number 1 arrives late tonight, tomorrow morning with some chilly air. Front number 2 arrives tomorrow night with cold air. And Amber, we'll talk about that when I come back in a few minutes.
All right, Chris, we will see you then. Right now, we want to get to Attorney General Andy Beshear, who is addressing the governor's cuts to higher education in Frankfort.
Unilaterally cutting or reducing an explicit appropriation made by the General Assembly in the current controlling biennium's budget. He was cutting completely, not just changing the timing at which a university would receive their funds. A governor, any governor, does not have this power or authority. The governor's actions violate explicit statutes that govern budget reductions. They violate last year's biennium budget, the last 2 years' biennium budget, which became law after it was passed by a 37-1 Senate vote and an 89-11 House vote. And these actions violate the separation of powers mandated by Kentucky's Constitution. In fact, the governor's position would mean the General Assembly merely suggests how the governor might spend money if he so chooses. A budget passed by the General Assembly is a mandate, not a recommendation, provided there are sufficient funds. And when there are not sufficient funds, a governor cannot simply choose a specific group to cut. Instead, there is a law on how he must act. You all have seen it more than a few times in the last several years. To trigger a budget reduction, one of 2 events must occur. Either the consensus forecasting group must issue an official revenue estimate reflecting a revenue shortfall, or at the end of the fiscal year, there must be an actual revenue shortfall. Neither is the case here, and neither is the case now. But if they were, still additional steps would be required. First, under the law, the unappropriated balance of funds in the surplus account of the general fund must be used to meet any shortfall. If that's not enough, then the governor must turn to the budget bill, the last enacted budget bill, first. That budget bill, again, is a law. It is passed just like any other statute into law. And if you look back at that biennium budget for the last 2 years, it contains a specific provision about any shortfall. And it lists exactly how cuts must occur, and even the order they must occur in a cascading order. Cutting universities does not appear on that list at all. And cutting general fund appropriations to the executive branch agencies appears 6th on that list, which again only comes after any surplus funds in the general account. To be clear, the governor has not taken any of these steps to date. Instead, the approach he took was to put a 4.5% budget reduction for this fiscal year into the next biennium's budget. And that would have been legal because the General Assembly would have changed an appropriation through statute. But to date, he has failed, and that does not allow a governor to go beyond what the law allows. Now, a university could voluntarily agree not to spend its full appropriation, but we all know that cuts to university directly result in tuition hikes. And in my opinion, a university president that would voluntarily agree to an action that raises tuition would be a dereliction of duty. This is not about political drama. This is not about elections. And this is not any Bevin versus Beshear. It's about the law. It's about what the Constitution requires. It's about how the Constitution protects our liberty. Under the logic put forth by the governor, he could shut down all of government by simply refusing to allot any money anywhere. Or he could totally refuse to allot money, shutting down any office, unit, university, program, or institution at his whim. He could shut down Operation Unite. He could eliminate Child Protective Services. He could close the Kentucky State Police, or even defund the legislature itself. That is the exact type of power our democracy, our Constitution, and our liberty explicitly forbid.
You are just tuning in right now. You're listening to Attorney General Andy Beshear there in Frankfort. He is addressing the recent cuts to higher education that Governor Bevin just made. He has said there that the governor does not have the power or authority to make the cuts that he just made yesterday. He says it's a violation of separation of power. He's also talking about this not being political drama. It is about the law. We will continue to follow what the Attorney General has to say there. Now, of course, these cuts were made just yesterday by Governor Bevin. Today, our Victor Puente is in Frankfort getting reaction to those cuts. Victor?
These cuts are for the current fiscal year. Most of the colleges and universities that have commented on them say they've been preparing for this step. Yesterday, Governor Matt Bevin announced a 4.5% cut in funding to state colleges and universities. That happened a few hours after the House and Senate failed to reach an agreement on a budget for the next 2 years. The sticking point was cuts to education. Bevin had originally asked for a 9% cut, but the Republican-led Senate had offered to lower those cuts to 4.5%. In a statement, Bevin said the cuts were needed to help pay the state's debt, saying, quote, "Our pension system is on the brink of insolvency. We have more than $35 billion in pension obligations." Some students at UK told us they understood the cuts were necessary, while others feared those cuts could hurt the state.
I think for every dollar you put into University of Kentucky, you get multiple dollars out in the economy. And I think he's really not realizing this, and I'm really worried about what Governor Bevin is doing to the school and to our economy.
House Speaker Greg Stumbo told us he isn't sure if those cuts are legal. You'll hear from him coming up at 5 about how Democrats plan to respond. In Frankfort, Victor Puente, WKYT.
Morehead State University has already announced it's mandating furloughs for university employees. The university staff and administrators will have to take 5 furlough days, 1 during each pay period between the end of April and the end of June. As for full-time faculty, they will receive a non-recurring salary reduction for next school year that is equal to 5 contract days of pay. We have responses to the cuts from other schools in our area on WKYT.com. Well, in a big announcement, Kentucky men's basketball freshman guard Jamal Murray made it official. He is entering the NBA draft. Our Rob Romley is here now with more on what he had to say during a news conference in Memorial Coliseum this afternoon. Rob?
Well, Amber, Kentucky fans will have nothing but good memories of Jamal Murray. He came into UK for 1 season and was one of the top scorers in the country. Murray sat alongside his dad, Roger, this afternoon at the Coliseum. He credited his father for getting him where he is today. He thanked John Calipari and his teammates, and he announced he's going into the NBA draft.
With that said, I'm ready to take on the challenge of playing at the next level, and I want to declare for the NBA draft. So. That's my plan, and I want to thank all the fans for their support. It's been a crazy experience. I had a lot of fun this year. Excited to take on the challenges and see the journey ahead of me.
An emotional moment came after Roger Murray talked about his son. The two embraced. We'll have all of that for you coming up just a little bit later in sports. Amber, the really good news today probably was that Tyler Eulis wasn't up there on the podium with Jamal. There's been a lot of speculation that Tyler would leave too. Jamal said he didn't know what Tyler's plans are. Amber?
I think that's a good sign for now, at least. Rob, thank you. By the way, Jamal Murray scored 720 points this season, the UK freshman scoring record. We are working on a number of other stories for you on WKYT starting at 4:30. Sam Dick joins us now from the newsroom with a look at some of the news in progress. Hello, Sam.
Good afternoon, Amber. The case involving a high-profile bourbon theft returned to court today. There were discussions over evidence. It was an anonymous tipster that led to the discovery of the alleged stolen bourbon barrels and to what's referred to as Pappygate. In a motion filed this week, attorney Whitney Lawson aims to suppress all evidence obtained through 2 search warrants that led sheriff's deputies to 5 barrels of allegedly stolen wild turkey on the Kurtzinger property. It goes on to say Lawson's motion argues there was not enough probable cause for the initial search warrant.
There was a prior investigation that happened in regards to another theft that occurred at Buffalo Trace. There was an extensive, as you heard, investigation that went on with that we think is related to this. So we've asked for that discovery, and as you heard today, the prosecutor is going to get it to us.
It's not clear when this case will be back in a courtroom. Attorneys are working on responding to motions that have been filed. We'll have more details from court ahead on WKYT News at 5 o'clock. A bridge over Lake Harrington will not be reopening today as originally planned. The State Transportation Cabinet says the Kennedy Mill Bridge on Kentucky 152 between Garrett and Mercer counties will remain closed until at least next Friday. The bridge closed in September, so deteriorating steel supports could be fixed. We'll have more details on that situation and the delay ahead on WKYT News coming up at 4:30. That's a look at some of the news in progress on this Friday. Amber, back to you.
The wait is finally over for fans wanting a glimpse of Tesla's newest electric car. That begins today's Money Watch. Even though the Model 3 won't be available until late 2017, Tesla says it already has more than 115,000 reservations. The starting price is $35,000. It's less than half the cost of previous models. CEO Elon Musk says the car will travel at least 200 miles when fully charged. The skies could someday be crowded with delivery drones, and Amazon wants to make sure we don't get hit. The company filed a patent for talking drone propellers. They'd make warning noises and shout phrases to alert people on the ground. For insurance, the drone could say, "Watch out," so get out of the way. And soda sales are falling flat. Consumption in the U.S. fell for the 11th consecutive year in 2015 and is now at its lowest level in 30 years. That's according to a new report which says diet sodas also took a hit as more Americans are trying to switch to healthier beverage options. It is time now for Better Living, health, education, and consumer news that impacts your life. Doctors now say drinking coffee decreases your risk of colon cancer. Researchers at the University of Southern California compared data from 5,000 people who had been diagnosed with colorectal cancer against healthy people. The findings suggest that the more coffee a person drinks, the lower the risk of colon cancer. It's that time many of us dread. Spring brings lots of nice things, but it also brings pollinating plants as well, and that brings on sneezing in full force. Seth Kovar has more.
Looking to show pollen who's boss this allergy season? Here's some things experts say you can do to make the allergy season more bearable. There are a multitude of medications out there to deal with the sniffles and headaches. Doctors say finding what works takes a bit of trial and error. Antihistamines can fight your sneezing and runny nose, but keep in mind they can also make you drowsy. Meanwhile, nasal decongestants can be a big help to stop a stuffed-up nose, but experts say to use them sparingly because overuse could actually make your symptoms worse. There's stronger options out there if the meds aren't doing the job. Getting a skin allergy test can tell you what kind of pollen triggers your symptoms. Blood tests exist as well to help you get a clearer idea of what you're allergic to. And there are allergy shots your doctor can give you. The injections are typically given over the course of months or years. And while they can be effective, doctors say to have patience, as they can take 6 months to a year to see viable effects. For today's Health Minute, I'm Seth Kovar.